Everyone, I'm here to do your What's Cracking reading. Thank you so much for your subscriptions. Thank you for continued support and your beautiful comments. Okay, so we're going to use the Tarot of the Divine today, which looks like this. And we'll see what's coming up on your What's Cracking reading. Okay, so we're starting here with the Seven of Swords. The Seven of Swords, I always say, is one of those cards that probably gets a bad rap, and it really isn't a bad card. None of the tarot cards are bad cards. We can see them being a little bit more challenging if they're in certain positions, but the Seven of Swords for me can go either way depending on what's around it. So the traditional meaning of the card is about trying to get away with something. So sometimes people can see that as cheating or, sort of, I guess, that type of thing, betrayal. Sometimes for me it comes up as a self-sabotage thing, sort of just pointing out that maybe you are trying to get away with fooling yourself. That's a big one for me. Sometimes it can come up when somebody's ghosted you, for example. So it sort of has a lot of variations. So I always wait for the card behind it, which is the High Priestess. So what I'm feeling here is that there is a situation here that you're being asked to pay certain attention to. This is about trusting your intuition more than actually seeing what's going on. So if somebody around you is doing things, or even if you're doing things, rather than rely on what you're seeing, trust your gut instinct. Sometimes we have to do that because people will fool us by saying, no, everything's great, no problem at all. And you go, oh, well, okay, then trusting. And then something underhand happens. It can also happen too, I feel, when people are really manipulative. And, sometimes we go away and we feel it. We feel it really deeply that something isn't right. But we try to dismiss it. We try to feel differently about it because we don't want to see bad in people. And that can be detrimental for us. So for me, that is a sort of energy going on in the cards this morning. Perhaps someone's not being upfront, somebody's not being truthful. I do have the Six of Pentacles coming through. So this always with me makes me feel like somebody's not investing in something. Maybe you're dealing with someone who's starting to be a little bit more trying to get away with something. This sort of energy here is sometimes when somebody hasn't told you the truth, and it may not be damning, it might not be a really bad thing, but it can be important for you to pay attention to. So it may be, sometimes people think they aren't lying if they just omit information, and my thinking is it is lying by omission. So if somebody doesn't tell you something, they are intentionally avoiding saying something to you. That's lying. It sort of reminds me that whole thing is what is cheating, and people say, oh, it's not cheating if you're talking on the internet. Well, that depends on who you are. In my eyes it is, but that's my feeling here. So I'm seeing these cards feeling like somebody's not telling you everything. You may only be getting part of the story. This could be a child. If you've got a child that's trying to tell you they're not in trouble at school, but yet they've been called into the headmaster's office or the principal's office, that type of energy. They don't want to get into trouble, so they're trying to find some way to craft their story here to try and keep them out of being in the limelight. So somebody is definitely doing something here. I also have the Four of Swords and the Ten of Cups. Now there is an energy here that I want you to be aware of that just really came up for me. That, maybe sometimes when there's something wrong with people, we may not tell people because we don't want them to worry about us. So even though that's not deliberately lying or lying by omission, it is in theory lying. And sometimes that sort of, we class that as a white lie, because we don't want people to get hurt. And we understand that by perhaps opening up sometimes that we are not giving the whole story. And that's what it feels like to me. It feels like somebody's avoiding telling you something for a reason. And I don't think that at the end of the day, any reason is good enough for hiding something, unless you're planning a surprise party for someone, in which case I feel that that could be forgiven. Or if you're trying to do something that isn't going to hurt anybody or isn't going to have a bearing on anybody, then that perhaps is a little different too. But if you're hiding something from somebody because you're trying to protect them, or you're hiding something from somebody because you feel that they aren't able to take the truth, then maybe that is not the right thing to do. Now, I'll give you a little example of this, because this is how it sort of messes up your intuition. And I remember hearing this years ago and thinking, wow, that really made sense to me. You know, you walk into a room and two people have been fighting, and your sense is that the atmosphere feels really tense, and you can tell by people's energy. Absolutely. So it's like that time when you walk up to somebody and you know there's something wrong, and you ask them if they're okay and they just burst out crying. It's like you instinctively know that the energy is different, but some people don't trust you reading that energy. And some of us are very in tune when we're children. We learn to be because it keeps us out of trouble. We don't want to get into trouble, so we're very in tune. So you walk into a room and two people are there, and they have this energy around them that says to you something is not quite right. And you say to them, trusting your intuition, is something the matter? And both of them turn around and go, no, 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 everything's great. What starts to happen at that point is you start to distrust how you're feeling. That is what happens to intuition when we're young. So what happens is we grow up not really trusting what we're feeling, which, as I said, can be quite detrimental, because at times you're going to feel things that are really important for you to express or know, and you will ignore them. So what I'm feeling here is something like this is happening. Something is being called to you. You intuitively know that it's there. You're intuitively picking up on it. You know something is wrong, but people are telling you, whoever they are, there is nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. Now, as I said, sometimes we do this if we feel we don't want to hurt the other person, or, you know, if we've been sort of running in trying to get, you know, a diagnosis of something and the doctor's worried because there might be something more wrong with us, we might feel like we're protecting somebody else by not telling them. But in reality, that is probably doing more damage than less damage. Now, sometimes we do it with children, and I want you to reconsider, even with children, that you are not lying. Because if you lie to a child, then their intuition too will be falling out of place. Now, sometimes we do that because we think of the right thing. So if we're having a relationship problem for some reason, we might say to our children, no, everything's okay. Your father and I are fine. So your poor child then gets really confused about that. Like, I don't feel that you need to tell them everything, but maybe it's okay to just say, well, things aren't great between us at the moment, or Daddy and I have had a little bit of an argument, but we're going to be okay. That makes me feel a little bit more like you're being truthful about something. So finding a way that's diplomatic and kind, I feel, is a really good way to go. But denying it, like with that Seven of Swords energy, I would say to you, whatever's going on here, if somebody's doing this to you and you're going away thinking, that doesn't feel right to me, something about that does not sit well with me, then maybe it's time to sort of dig a little deeper. You know, we do this all the time with things, right? And we completely, in the end, we think there's something wrong with our internal systems. And then when we find out it's true, or something has some validity to it, can be so disappointing that you have not listened to that little bell inside you that's gone ding-a-ling-a-ling, you need to take note here. So whatever this is, something is coming up for you today where somebody's perhaps avoiding telling you the whole truth. We do have the Hermit card here. So I'm feeling here you could be dealing with a Virgo, but to me this feels like you are actually closing down a little bit because you're not really understanding where you're going with something. Now, I know that sometimes that could mean that somebody's not being truthful with you, and maybe they have good reason, but if you dig a little bit and they still don't give you a reason, maybe there's more to the story than they're telling you. It may not necessarily mean they're doing something really bad, but maybe they're not opening up to you because they're like sort of closed off and not really wanting to share with you. But if you're picking that up with your intuition, I would say to you, deserves a little bit more of a dig. All right, so we have the Ten of Wands coming through here. With the Four of Wands, okay, so immediately I'm feeling, because we have like a closing here or finishing up. You know, sometimes I sort of speak to people and I feel I read or maybe done a reading for someone some time ago, and I remember this person saying to me that they lived with this person and they shared a home and they were in what she saw as a committed relationship, but he didn't. He didn't see it as a committed relationship. And whenever she said something to that degree, he would say, I'm not your partner, we're not committed. But they'd been living together for some years. Now, to me, that was like alarm bells, red flags, whatever. It was just really quite scary for me. But she was really like nonplussed about it, like just didn't seem to be phased. And I thought, you've been told that for long enough now that you're not seeing anymore what the truth is. And the truth was evident to me because it was new. So I feel like those sort of things, when people have been doing them for a long time, you just start to accept as the normal, when in reality you've been manipulated. And obviously your partner's still waiting around for some sort of change to come to make him feel that he can walk off. And he will never feel guilty because he's told you the whole time that you're not in a relationship and you're not committed. So if that is the case, then you have become adapted to that and you feel that that is the way things are. So in a way, you're sabotaging yourself as well. So I feel something like this is going on here. To me, it feels like, for some of you, it may be a relationship because I've got the Four of Wands here. But the feeling here that it's disrupting things and that you're actually looking at some way of either bringing something to a close or calling it. Because you do have the World and the Ten of Wands, which means you've carried this burden for a really long time. And the universe is saying, finish it. You need to do something. It's causing you distress, carrying this weight around all the time. Now, when I see the Ten of Wands, I often say to people, have you got a bad back or a sore shoulder? Are you carrying the weight of the world on your body? Because sometimes this will reflect in your demeanor. So sometimes we get a bad back if we're worried about our stability. We get a bad, a sore shoulder because we're shouldering too much responsibility. But very often this is the sort of energy that manifests in the body that sort of tells you somehow or another that your stability is being disrupted. And I'm a big believer in listening to your body. So I feel like here there is some sort of ending coming here with the World card. Now, somebody may be dealing with somebody online overseas or in another country, and it just makes me feel here that perhaps they're not telling you the whole story. I mean, I've heard of people who've been having relationships with people and found out they were married, but they'd never told them. Those sort of things. Now, I don't feel that being married and cheating on your partner is so much the problem. I feel like it's not telling them is the problem. So then they can make an informed choice about whether they progress with you or not. But I certainly wouldn't judge people in terms of cheating, but I would say to you, if somebody's not being truthful about it, that is where the problem lies. So we have the Knight of Pentacles coming through, the Ace of Cups, and the Hanged Man. Wow. All right. And now I do feel that there is love in this situation, absolutely, but somebody's not being honest about something. Somebody's not being forthright with you. So it could be that they do love you because the Ace of Cups is here. But I'm also feeling with this Ace of Cups, maybe you need to love yourself enough to know what you are worthy of. Because there is some sort of change coming here as a result of finding something out. Some sort of change, but you see, I feel like the change is lying with you here. There's some sort of lesson in this for you about trusting people. Now, I used to be one of those people who trusted everybody until they proved me wrong. And that got me so many times. It got me so many times. So now I'm a little bit on the edge of, I'm not going to really trust you until I get to know you well enough to know that that is who you are. So I do things very differently now. I more observe people's behaviour, listen to what they say to me, those sort of things. And I'm much more aware that not everybody can be trusted. unfortunately. As much as we have this glorified view of the world that everybody should be trusted like I used to be. And of course, I got kicked in the pants so many times because that's the way I always was. So now I listen to the red flags. I watch for the red flags. If I get something that's incongruent or just doesn't sit right with me, I'd rather investigate that now than just trust the other person. But once I get to trust you, I know that I feel really comfortable with you and we're going to have a really good relationship or friendship or whatever it is. But there is always this element there now when I meet new people that I need to be aware that not everybody has your best interest at heart. So I feel like here it is a little bit about self-love. You could be dealing with Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio here. And we do have communication coming through. All right, we have the Nine of Wands. So I feel like perhaps this has happened more than once. Oh my goodness, you know what it reminds me of? You know when people say, oh, I've just done that, but I won't do it again. And then, you know, a few months later, they do the same thing again. Or somebody's telling you things and perhaps their story changes every time. You know, it might only be a little bit, but it's sort of like that's just enough for you to question the story. And I feel like if you've especially dealt with someone who is dishonest, you will always trust what's happening until someone proves you wrong. And when they prove you wrong, you can see all the times that you have been betrayed or something has happened in the past. And when you finally hit that mark where you go, oh my goodness, they've done this, all of a sudden you can see all the things in the past they've done as well. And that's really when you are sort of taken in by somebody who's very manipulative. That seems to be how it happens. It's almost like you can see the trail there, but you never listen to it. Or they told you something in the beginning that you never listened to. And that's what I feel is happening here. It's like you're dealing with somebody here who possibly has been doing it for such a long time that you've never seen their dishonesty. Let's just get a little bit more of a look at this. All right, so we have the Seven of Swords. So I feel like someone's not being 100% truthful with you. That's what it feels like to me. But there's sort of, maybe your intuition's got a little bit whacked now because you trusted it, but now they've sort of manipulated you enough that you can't see what they're doing. So maybe you're just trusting where you're going with this. The Six of Pentacles tells me you've got someone who's not investing in you the way they need to invest. So if that's the case, maybe they don't trust you to tell you the whole story. Maybe they're scared of losing you or whatever else. But if we're always avoiding being truthful with people or avoiding having those open conversations, sooner or later you will come across the same as being incongruent or maybe not being truthful. And we can do that sometimes when we're trying to avoid having those conversations. I do see the Four of Swords coming through with the Ten of Cups. So ultimately, whatever this is going to, I feel, lead to a greater knowing for you. This doesn't feel to me like it's about the other person. It feels like you're learning something that perhaps you haven't seen before, and it's going to open the door for lots of intuition, lots of things to come to the surface that maybe you've been depriving yourself of, which is absolutely beautiful. So I feel like here for many of you, because the Ace of Cups is in the middle, it may be somebody who you're close to. Doesn't necessarily mean a romantic partner, it could be a family member. But I feel like here it's somebody where you have a love bond with. And there seems to be some sort of communication taking place because you have seen something that perhaps is not the same as it used to be. You know, when somebody tells you a story and they tell it one way, and then a little bit further down the track you have a conversation, they tell you the story again. Sometimes people embellish because it's just a normal thing to do. So if, you know, things are a different color or, you know, things are a different shape or size, that sort of thing, maybe they're just getting confused in their own mind, so don't jump to those conclusions. But maybe if some of the elements have really changed, like, you know, when I did it the first time, I said, you know, something like, oh, it was, you know, a timing thing. It just was the right time, and I did it because it was timing. And the next time around, they might say, yeah, but somebody pushed me to do that because I was being encouraged to do it that way because of this person. That's a completely different scenario. That's a story change. So I feel like whatever's happening here, you are really starting to understand how to trust that little intuition of yours. And maybe you've been denying it for so long that you've lost it. You've lost that sort of connection that you had. But, you know, people are very, very good with manipulation. All right, so we have, oh, I'd like to say I could read that, but sometimes I have a little bit of trouble. It is a really cute card though, so I'm glad they got numbers on because I'd never be able to read. 43. Geo the Slew. So that's Geo the Slew. This is cycles of time, slowness, waiting, and patience. So it's the gnome of slow processes. So it's, I guess, if it's talking about slow processes, maybe it's just taken you time to get around to this. Maybe you're starting to realize that now you've sort of had that bit of a kick or a bit of awakening in it. So it says, slow down, sit back in your chair and think a little. Why are you going so fast? What do you hope to gain from it? Are you metaphorically trying to push the river? What kind of stress is being created in your life by hurrying? Hurrying. The presence of Geo in a reading indicates that the situation or issue is part of a long process that cannot well be hurried. So I feel like with this, like I said, I feel like something's been happening over a period of time that maybe you started to accept now. So maybe you've just got used to not trusting your own intuition. That's what it comes down to. It is important to settle in for a long haul, to set a pace that you can maintain for as long as needed while remaining relaxed and patient, which I think is absolutely beautiful. So actually, it sort of makes me feel like the reversed meaning here may have a bit of a, because it sort of talks here, it may be a time to give things a tactful but firm push to get them in motion. So maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe you're starting to realize something and you're taking action on it, which will change things. But for me, it feels like you're the one benefiting here. Even if the other person is doing the wrong thing or trying to pull the wool over your eyes, is sheep in wolf's clothing, any of those things, then I feel like here it's you that's learning, not them. I'll leave you with that.